Man, the deeper we dig into this, the more the ground shifts under it. But before we get into the main story, I want to set the tone clearly. Rant Strategies is not a political channel. That's absolutely never been the mission here. But the reality is this: if you care about preparedness, you can't pretend politics doesn't influence the landscape. Natural disasters, they teach us one set of lessons. Your storms, fires, floods, earthquakes, those are all apolitical. They don't care who you voted for. But the man-made side of preparedness is different. Those threats almost always trace back to policy decisions, geopolitical tensions, or failures in systems built by people. And that means the conversation inevitably brushes up against politics. Here's the key, though. We don't wear red jerseys or blue jerseys on this channel. We live by the idea that we wear one jersey, the what's best for America jersey, and what can we learn and share with each other just based on what we are seeing. Everything we talk about here is through that lens. Not team loyalty, not all the outrage bait that's out there, just clarity and accountability. And speaking of accountability, it's hard not to notice how many major questions in this country still don't have answers. A perfect example of this, the Epstein files. People across the entire political spectrum have been waiting for transparency on that case for literally years now. And every time it feels like we're getting close, something else just conveniently pops up that pulls all the attention away. It's frustrating. And honestly, this is one of the few issues where everyday Americans, regardless of background, regardless of politics, all seem to agree that the truth should come out. That's the kind of accountability that I'm talking about. Not to score points for one side or the other, but because transparency makes the country stronger. So as we press on, I hope you can respect that approach. We're not here to divide anyone. We're here to understand the world as it is so we can prepare for the world as it might become. All right, so with that said, let's break this down clearly and without all of the noise that is already surrounding this. So, as we all know, 2 National Guard members were shot near the White House. One of them being Specialist Sarah Beckstorm. She unfortunately has succumbed to her injuries. We know the suspect is an Afghan national who previously worked with a CIA-supported partner force overseas, and those are the confirmed facts, and that's where we start. The suspect entered the U.S. in 2021 under Operation Allies Welcome. He allegedly carried out this ambush-style attack on the 2 Guard members using a revolver, which that in itself is incredibly interesting to me because the fact that he used a revolver just shows a level of deeper understanding as to probably where his head was while he was preparing for this. There's an aspect of training and understanding that goes along with the fact that he used a revolver. But we also know that the FBI is treating this as a potential act of terrorism, and that the charges have already been upgraded to first-degree murder. That's the factual foundation. There's no speculation there. There are no assumptions there. Now, it's important to say this clearly. One individual's actions do not define Afghan allies. Thousands of them fought and bled beside U.S. forces. Many, presumably, have saved many American lives. This incident is about one man, not an entire group of people. And the way that I see this is that this is a systems issue, not a people issue. Whenever something like this happens, the conversation can get emotional fast. We've already seen that. But the real question here is about process, not about identity. What we should all be questioning is how was he vetted? How was he monitored? And how did the multiple agencies involved in all of this coordinate? Because again, this is about systems, oversight, and interagency communication, not ethnicity, religion, or even immigration status. Because with that said, right on cue, the political noise has already come in at an incredibly loud volume. We're already seeing both political parties blame each other's vetting processes, but the truth is the evacuation and the vetting of Afghan partners, we saw it play out live. It was a massive, chaotic, multi-agency effort spanning multiple administrations. Oversimplifying it helps no one. And I think our focus should be on what we don't know yet, because this part matters just as much as what we do know. So things like, probably the most important, we don't have a confirmed motive. We do not have evidence linking his CIA-related work to the attack. The investigators are still digging into his digital footprint, his travel, and his mental state. And with that, when we acknowledge uncertainty, we prevent fear from filling the gaps. So instead of, spiraling into fear or division, here are the questions that I think actually help move us forward on this case. Things like, how do we improve vetting everyone without demonizing our allies? How do agencies share information more effectively, which is kind of ridiculous to even have to say at this point in time, because communication sharing and intelligence sharing is an ever-present obstacle that always gets discussed across all levels of government, and it's ridiculous that we're still dealing with that. But then I would say, what does a partner force really mean in the intelligence world? And these are the questions that I think help lead us to solutions. Because, this was a tragedy carried out by one individual. The response to this should be measured, fact-driven, and focused on fixing systems, not turning Americans against each other and not turning us against the allies who stood with us and continue to stand with us overseas. This is, again, we're having that clarity over fear, facts over noise comes into play. And here's the preparedness lesson that's embedded with all of this. And to look at that, let's look at what DC's response really shows. So if you strip away the headlines and look at the behavior of the city during the incident, you see a pattern that is absolutely worth internalizing. Because when something violent happens, especially in a dense urban environment, authorities don't assume that it's a lone actor. They immediately behave as there could be more events to take place, whether it's a second attacker, a coordinated team, a secondary device, or even a follow-on attack at time specifically for the responders that are showing up. And that's not paranoia. That is protocol in a lot of places. And DC demonstrated that perfectly. They locked down the White House. They shut down the nearby metro stations. They expanded the security perimeter. Reagan Airport grounded their flights. And then they pushed the federal buildings into a shelter-in-place protocol. They treated the event as potentially larger than it was until they could prove otherwise. Now, granted, you and I, we're not a federal agency with airspace authority, but all we have to do to make this relate to us is simply just scale it down. So I would say, first and foremost, don't fixate on the first threat. If something happens near you, whether it's gunfire, an explosion, some sort of vehicle attack, your brain will want to focus in on the obvious danger. Fight that instinct. Assume that the first event might just be a distraction or even just the opening move on what's to come. So once you realize that, then move with purpose, not panic. Just like DC tightened its perimeter, you need to tighten yours. We say in the industry all the time, get off the X. Put distance between you and the threat. Avoid predictable choke points. Don't run toward crowds or bottlenecks. And this is where I think having a working knowledge of the area that you're in, or just a tiny bit of pre-planning, can pay dividends for you if something happens nearby. Beyond that, I would say keep scanning for that second problem. This is where most civilians fall short, and that's where they'll hit their failure point. Your situational awareness shouldn't collapse once you feel safe. You want to continue looking at the picture as a whole. Start, scanning and looking for unusual bags or objects or people moving against the flow. Maybe someone observing instead of fleeing, or even vehicles that are behaving oddly. I'm always talking about training and getting trained, and RANT doesn't offer any, but you can certainly do your research and find the really good person behavior schools that are out there. I've been through one or two of them, and they are pretty awesome to go through. And probably the most important thing that in a situation like this, it's going to happen suddenly, and I think you should just keep in mind that your main goal at that time is simply to break contact and stay unpredictable, just so that you can avoid becoming part of what will be a growing casualty count. So, guys, this was a tragedy, again, caused by one individual, and the response should stay grounded. And by grounded, I mean just grounded in facts. Because, again, we don't want the division. We can fix systems, but we can ask better questions in order to do so, and we need to stay aware of what we don't know. And truthfully, I don't know what's going to happen next. That uncertainty is exactly why preparedness matters. So, yeah, if you ever find yourself in the middle of an incident like this, don't get tunnel vision. Don't assume that the first threat is the only threat. Move, think, scan, and treat the unknown as potentially dangerous until it proves otherwise. And just real quick, if anyone out there, if you guys are interested in supporting the channel, that's obviously huge to do. All of the likes, all the subscriptions, subscribes, all the comments that were left in the last video, can't thank you enough for all that. If you are interested in making a donation to the channel, and you are also happen to be in need of a hat, and you want to look at a RANT Strategies hat, we have them in virtually every color combination you could possibly imagine. All you need to do, shoot me an email, taylor@rantstrategies.com, and give you the information on how to get that out to you. So with that, again, thank you everyone, and we'll see you on the next one. Be safe.